It's at this time that we bring you a very special and incredible story of a West Michigan man, his family, friends, and strangers brought together by tragedy, remarkable faith, and they say divine miracle. Here's Casey Jones.
Marley, the idea of faith is believing in something that you may never see. But what if that belief gave you a window to see that faith firsthand, only to find out that sight is such a small part of it, that perhaps it's not seeing is believing, but rather feeling? This young man, his family, friends, and complete strangers found themselves twisted in prayer, hope, and faith. Faith made stronger in the fall.
Don't you tell me that it wasn't meant to be.
I'm just out filming and skating around.
Call it destiny.
I remember we were both home.
It's like one of the warmest days. It's been in a while.
And he left the house and very excited because they were going to go shoot this video.
We just jumped on this. There was a block sitting right here, and we just jumped on the roof and then crawled up.
About 7 o'clock, I heard just a frantic knock on the door.
Went along top and got on the 3rd story.
And just quickly in your mind, you go through everybody's home.
And a big crash.
And Seth is gone, but he took his car, so he has his keys.
Seth was in here. So that's when we were trying to get in there.
And then I opened the door, and it was the police officer.
We couldn't see him, so we ended up having to bust a window over there.
And it just felt like the movies, you know, like you just knew instantly that something wasn't right.
We jumped the roof, literally fell 14 feet.
And the first thing she said was Seth Alfaro had a bad accident.
Seth Alfaro was any 21-year-old man, curious of the world, pushing its limits. Ultimately, it was that curiosity that led him into the back of a speeding ambulance headed for Spectrum's ER. Friends left to sift through dust, flickering in the light of a hole left behind. Parents, by police escort, rushed to the hospital, all while a young man prepared for the journey of his life as he inched closer to death. It was a journey he would not take alone. In the doors of the Alfaro home, two things are abundantly present: faith and family. In this moment, Chris is at her lowest. Her 21-year-old boy lay lifeless in a cold, dark hospital bed. The total darkness to reduce any sensory sensitivity. The cold to break his dangerously rising temperature. Seth's brain was swelling. He was in a coma.
And I said, could he die from this? And he said, yes, he could.
It'd be up to Seth what happens the next 24 hours. And they said, well, no, in the next 24 hours, if he's going to make it or not.
With a metal bolt drilled into the back of his head to track the pressure, those 24 hours crept to 3 days. Doctors tried to wake him from his coma. Seth showed no signs of life. For 3 weeks, the rhythm of his parents' lives would rise and fall with the sounds and numbers of machines.
And they said, well, actually, the peak swelling of the brain is 3 to 5 days. And we got through that, and then they're like, well, it really can go 5 to 7 days.
It was a constant game of wait and see.
Is it the sedation or is it the brain injury? And nobody could say.
Then, 10 days in, hope. Seth wiggled his thumb.
We had moments.
That hope quickly cast over by the shadow of devastating results.
They did the MRI before he was awake. And the MRI was not good at all.
So you can see some of the blood in there.
Dr. Sam Ho is the chief of staff at Mary Free Bed.
Generally, this type of injury bears very poor prognosis.
He's been practicing spinal cord injuries since 1983.
The shearing injury, they usually don't recover as well.
He doesn't need to say
But,
much.
the
The shearing or shredding of the brain, the white blood marks all over Seth's MRI paint a grim picture. What happened next can only be chalked up to faith. Faith that a doctor had in a family, that a family had in a son, that a son had in life.
I always believe that my patient and I cross paths. There's a reason.
Dr. Ho took a chance. Based on a conversation with Seth's dad, he moved Seth from Spectrum to Mary Free Bed.
And sometimes the outcome surprise you. Somebody up there make all the decision, do everything for us.
He can't say why specifically he took what looked like a hopeless case.
One of my peers asked me, like, why did you take him?
He calls it a gut instinct. Others might call it faith. The Alfaros found their faith stretching in God, in their son, and now in Dr. Ho.
Somebody up there, they do all the work. And that's, this type of injury based on MRI outcome is bad, but it tells you can't always based on that. Patients have tremendous ability to heal. You give them a chance, they will heal.
The healing for Seth didn't come right away. For 3 weeks, he hung on a thread of life. His parents, typically private, turned to Aunt Kathy. They needed her to rally the prayer warriors.
If we don't put it out there, how are people going to know what to pray for or even pray for him?
From day 3, Kathy turned to Facebook. One post after another. Details of the struggles. Day 6, he had pneumonia. The devastation following the MRI. Seth's little steps. He was off oxygen. The Alfaros started to notice a trend. They'd share a need for a prayer, and that hurdle would be jumped.
What happened with Facebook is a miracle of itself. It's a miracle and a testament of the love of people. A lot of people for someone they didn't even know. People who didn't even know us didn't know Seth. People from Spain, from Italy, from New Zealand.
The Alfaros were surrounded in love, wrapped in prayer when they needed its comfort.
I was having a really difficult time at that point saying, okay, Lord, your will, your way, your time. I couldn't figure out what he was doing or why it was going this way. And this woman had this vision of all these people praying in Seth's hospital room. And her comment was,
a dream vision I had last night around 3 a.m. and had this vivid movie-like picture of hundreds and hundreds of people streaming into Seth's hospital room in the Adoration Chapel, praying on their knees for Seth. Our Father is listening and loving. As you say, the waiting is hard, yet he is healing Seth in the waiting.
She said, God is healing him in the waiting. And then you fast forward a few weeks down the road when Seth can talk, and he tells us that while he was in his coma, he saw hundreds of people in his hospital room praying for him. So many people that it was spilled out into 5 other rooms full of people he didn't even know, praying for him.
Welcome back. Seth Alfaro was alive, but the journey ahead of him was a slate of uncertainty. Doctors feared that he may be severely impaired for the remainder of his life. But from the moment Seth opened his eyes from complete darkness, the people around him knew he had done more than just wake up. He had come back from the depths of our world with a new purpose and a renewed faith in the fall. And he had quite the story to tell.
They gave him 4 blocks with his letters of his name and said, can you put those in order to spell your name? And he batted them around the table like he didn't know what it even meant.
A heart-wrenching feeling as that shadow lurked over the hope.
But 2 days later in speech, he took the pen and he was writing full adult sentences. And one of the first things he wrote was, my God is good. And this is a 21-year-old kid who was out skateboarding and woke up in a hospital unable to walk, talk, eat, swallow, and he's writing, my God is good. From that point on, he was frantic to try to tell us something, but he couldn't talk.
His vocal cords were too weak, and his inability to communicate grew his frustration. So the Alfaros turned to Kathy. She again turned to Facebook. And days later,
it was just a whirlwind for the next probably 2 or 3 days. Every time he talked, it was, he told us right away that he had never begged or pleaded for anything so much in his life, that he had heard God and felt his love. He told us right away that he saw himself laying there on the machines. He saw all the people praying for him, people crying for him, and that was what brought him back. He said he was really low, and it would have been so easy to just fade away and die.
If I wanted to die, I could have died. And it's so easy to die. It's like when you're really tired and you could fall asleep, it's that easy to die. But I saw everyone who was praying for me. Prayer does so much more than you could ever imagine. And that's what gave me the strength to come back, and that's what gave me the strength to fight.
He saw it, felt it, the energy, the light, the hope.
Seth, before the accident, was always looking out for himself. Was shallow. You couldn't have a heart-to-heart and really talk about the faith. Now it's like, I want to talk about the faith. I want to become closer to God. So, it's just that want. God's really blessed me. I even think back when I was in the hospital bed, when I couldn't even walk, when I was learning how to swallow. Just the peace that God gave me and the patience that he gave me. And so I see that, and I know that that came from God. And I want more of that. So where do I go? I go to God. You know, I can't explain it. You just see it. Almost like a perspective that the human can't even understand.
It's almost like you were above it, or?
Yeah, almost like above it in like a bird's eye kind of view.
But you could see and hear and feel.
Yeah, that's the most important. I could feel it. When people were praying for me, I could feel it. I didn't feel pain. I could feel, you know, when people were too tired or they didn't want to pray and they didn't feel like praying. Oh, it's not that important. When people wouldn't pray, that's what hurt. When they were too tired and they didn't want to take a little bit, 2 seconds to pray. I could feel that, and that hurt so bad. You could feel everything. It's like, it's more of like it's less of the words and just more like a feeling. Like you could feel it, like really feel it. Everything. The love, God's love is amazing.
Your priorities are different now.
Yeah. A lot of my priority used to be social media, how many likes something got, that determined on how the self-worth. And that's not where it is. My self-worth comes from being a son of God, truly.
He's back on his feet, walking towards that light, his direct connection between him and God. Or is there ever a day where you wish you could go back to the day of the accident and not jump from that roof?
No, because the way that God's blessed me through this whole thing, experiences, and just the person that I am now, I don't think I would have changed like that and as quickly, you know. It is hard going through some of this stuff. It is. There's no other way to put it, but it's God's will. And that's what I try to remind myself. I'd rather be doing his will than my own.
I've been trying to make sense of the sorrow that I feel. Holding on for life to the only thing that's real. I've only scratched the surface. I barely had a tear.